Remember when I used to do a budget edition of Setup Wars every 5 episodes? Well, I decided to bring it back just once to see if you guys still enjoy watching it, because I think it's still a great way to showcase budget setups on the channel, because at the end of the day, not a lot of us have a high-end crazy setup. A lot of us started at the bottom, including myself. So I think it's really inspirational to see how some of these people kind of created their own budget setup to give you guys some really cool ideas on how to improve your very own. So with that said, I want to dedicate this episode to everyone out there watching who is still on the budget tier. So yeah, with that said, sit back and relax and let the Setup Wars begin.
A new game has arrived. A new game that has everyone at the edge of their seats.
Aruthio is a 3D real-time combat RPG game that has everyone talking. This game has already received over 2 million pre-registrations, and now you guys can play it for free too. This game is unlike anything I've seen on a mobile device, you guys. Visually stunning graphics with the most intense battles that will keep you immersed for hours. This ain't your average turn-based game, by the way. This requires a bit of strategy to beat your opponents. You will need to use these cards that are randomly generated by the system to cast your abilities. Also, various positions in the game offer different buff bonuses, allowing for a wider range of formations to be created before battle, and some skills even have an interrupt mechanic to stop your opponents from casting an ability. I mean, those are just a few aspects of the game that makes it challenging yet very fun to play. You can unlock many different characters in the game, each with its own unique set of skills and ultimate abilities. My favorite character so far is Gildan, not because of her massive shield, but because her ultimate deals damage and interrupts the enemy skills at the same time. If you download the game using my link below or by scanning the QR code on the screen, you'll receive a special SSR character. Just make sure to put in the code TechSource once you're in the game. Kicking off the episode is Caleb's super cozy and compact floating desk setup. He's a student from Oklahoma, and it took him about a month to redo his setup. Right off the bat, I gotta say it, I love the custom floating desk that he made against the corner of his room. And if this setup looks familiar to some of you guys, it's because it is. It was featured in episode 205 back in July of 2020, so it's been nearly 3 years since he had this. However, he has completely upgraded everything except the desk. But I do want to talk a little bit about the desk because I think this can really inspire some of you watching this video. When you think about a setup, you probably associate it with an IKEA tabletop, Alex units, maybe a little bit of RGB, the usual suspects that make up the foundation of every setup. But you don't have to go that route. There are cheaper alternatives. A great setup always starts with planning. I always recommend to sketch down your setup, even on a piece of paper, just to visualize what your setup's gonna look like. Even if you draw like a 2-year-old, that's fine. The location of your setup is the most important factor because that's the only thing that does not change. I mean, unless you renovate your home, obviously, but you have to build a setup that not only fits, but also complements the space. This setup is the perfect example. Caleb took advantage of every inch of this nook in the corner of his room to build a setup. Caleb was able to patiently save over the past few years and treat himself to an upgraded system. We went from a Ryzen 5 2600 to a Ryzen 7 3700X and from an RX 580 to a GTX 1660 Ti. The entire setup cost him $1,450, excluding the consoles since he already owned them before. I would strongly recommend a mousepad for your Model O. I think it deserves to glide on a smooth surface, but other than that, it's nice to see you back on the show. Here's another really creative setup that was done under a budget. Carter from Texas took 4 months to build this setup for graphic designing and gaming. The foundation is built on an unknown countertop that's being supported by a couple of drawers he picked up from Pottery Barn. He does everything on a single 60Hz Samsung monitor that's also hooked up to his Xbox One, which he uses mostly to play Forza Horizon 5. Now, even though he owns a Razer keyboard and a mouse and 4 pairs of headphones, most of the money saved was with the PC, which still has a Ryzen 5 1300 and a Gigabyte GTX 1060. Carter definitely has adopted the model of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's nice to see that he still cared enough about the setup to customize it. although it does look like you have your top two fans set as intake instead of exhaust. I can't really tell because the picture is really dark, but if it is, I'd flip them around when you get the chance. You can always tell who really cherishes their setup the most. People that take the time and effort to personalize it. When you pour your heart and soul into something, it really shows. In Carter's case, he hooked up a wall shelf and filled the space between with 3D art panels, and even went ahead and made his very own custom RGB lit hexagon panels. For those who want to do the same thing, you can cut up these insulation boards and attach them in the back to create spacing, and then simply wrap around the RGB strips to create a 3D look. The cable management isn't flawless by any means, and the exposed RGB isn't as attractive to look at, but overall, I think you've done a great job with this setup. Thank you, Carter, for sharing this with us. This next setup belongs to Hrag, aka KZ, who's an active member of my Discord server and a fellow Armenian. I'm glad you finally came on the show. So Hrag is currently a student from Lebanon, and this is the setup he built in 5 months for gaming, Discord, and other hobbies. The total cost of everything is right under $2,000. So he's using a custom-made desk with a matching riser for his 24-inch Dell monitor, and below that he's rocking a Corsair K70 keyboard that he won from one of our Discord events, and he's got that paired with a Pulsefire Haste mouse and a TS Topo black mousepad that just ties everything beautifully together. Just like the LED bars on the wall. And no, they are not the overpriced nanoleaf lines. These are actually custom made, and it's pretty clever how he made these. So basically he picked up a few raceways, cut them in specific lengths, and painted them in black to make sure the light doesn't pass through. Then he nailed the bottom piece to the wall, about 3 centimeters apart, to give it some spacing. He added a white LED strip in the channel, and he closed it off with the cover. The result looks incredible, especially considering he was able to achieve this by spending less than $50. He decided to use only a few channels to create the symbol of Mount Ararat, which is considered a biblical mountain. It is considered the resting place of Noah's Ark. But you can also use this method and just add more raceways and more RGB strips to create an even more crazy design. The PC powering the setup is a custom all-black budget build featuring the Ryzen 5 2600X and the RX 580. Everything else is neat and tidy with clean cable work, except one thing I would have done differently was made the monitor riser tall enough to squeeze in the audio interface instead of having it off to the side. But other than that, phenomenal work on this budget setup, and thank you, Hrag, for coming on the show. Coming at number 4 is a more minimalistic setup. In fact, it's so minimalistic that my boy doesn't even have a monitor stand. Peyton saved up for 3 years from doing chores until he had enough to build him this setup for gaming and video editing. If you're really trying to go for that minimal look, I would eventually pick up a monitor arm, but I would get one in white so it blends in with the setup's colors. At least this way, you can have the monitor at a more comfortable height for your neck. I also love the effort that you put in trying to conceal the cable of the keyboard, but in this case, you're actually drawing more attention to it. A few smaller white cable clips would have done the job a lot better, but if you want to take it a step further, you can even replace the black cable with a white one to make it blend in a lot better. I just feel like you're trying really hard to make a really clean setup, but end up overthinking and it just becomes counterproductive. Even using a random whiteboard on the bottom to help try covering the cables just makes it look worse. The more you try and conceal something, the more attention you bring to it. The PC, on the other hand, looks nice. It's a very clean white build featuring the Ryzen 5 3600X and the RX 6600. Really nice choice going with the white cable extensions, by the way. I think this definitely has a lot of potential, but it's a great start to a very clean and minimal setup. Thank you, Peyton, for sharing this with us. Wrapping up the episode is Tyler's laptop-powered gaming setup. And yes, he is using a MacBook. My guess is that he's gaming with a cloud surface like GeForce Now. He is planning on picking up 2 more monitors and a PC in the future, but as of now, this is the setup he uses for schoolwork and gaming. I don't have a problem with the 55-inch TV as the main display. I think it's far enough from his face to be fine, but it seems like it's a bit higher than normal. I would have mounted it a few inches lower so you're not constantly looking up. Your head should always be parallel to the floor. I hope that when you do get the monitors, you still end up mounting them to the wall because they really do free up a lot of space from the desk and you can continue to personalize it however you want. Depending on what you use for gaming, you might want to have more pad space for the mouse. But overall, very minor changes to a great starter setup, especially for a 12-year-old. There is only one way to go from here, and that's up. Thank you for sharing this with us. As always, guys, let me know in the comment section which of these setups was your favorite, but more importantly, let me know if you enjoyed the budget edition and you want me to bring it back officially. Maybe I'll do it like every 10 episodes or so, but let me know by tossing a like, or let me know in the comment section if you want me to make it happen. If enough of you want it, I will make it happen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.